Welcome to English 2 Mysteries and More Parents Orientation. This brief presentation is just to give an overview of content, policies, and procedures of English 2 before we get started just next week. It's coming right up so that we all can be on the same page and know what is to come. So just by way of introduction, my name is Christy Massey. Professionally, I've been a teacher for 2 decades. I started as a Liberty University grad and then took my first job teaching elementary school, which proved disastrous. Was not a good fit for my teaching style for them or for me. It was a rough first year. So the next year I transitioned to middle school and then into high school English, and that has proven to be a much better option. I've stayed there. I've been there ever since. After becoming a mom, I wanted to stay home with my new little guy and still have the opportunity to teach. So I began working for the Potter School, developing and fine-tuning English 1 for them. That experience demonstrated for me just how much I enjoy curriculum development. And since then, I've written English 1, English 2, and English 3 as classes to serve our local homeschool community. And then those grammar lessons that started all those years ago eventually became the Grammar the Right Way curriculum, which we use, Potter School requires, and then it's been picked up by a couple different Christian schools in several states throughout the country. That's so exciting to me. I resigned from Potter School after 15 years so that I could focus solely on teaching live and local in-person classes right here in our area. In my personal life, this man in the picture is my husband, Archie. We've been married for over 20 years. Archie serves as a police officer in Youngsville as of about 18 months ago. Before that, he was a U.S. Army soldier and then a police officer and detective in Durham for more than 20 years. And he calls that move from Durham to Youngsville like going from Sin City to Mayberry. It's just so different. However, Archie really enjoys small town policing, but there's a lot of time that was freed up because there's so much less crime in Youngsville. So that has allowed our family to also grow our farm to table business that started as a backyard homestead and then has expanded to now several small farms that Archie and the boys work, where they raise pastured, chemical-free pork, turkey, and soon to be chicken for our local community. Farming is really the joy of Archie's heart, and he's looking forward to going further into this full time once he's able to retire. These are our 4 boys. We homeschool them: Noah, Seth, Levi, and Joe. Our oldest is currently dual enrolled in the automotive program at Wake Tech this year as a junior, and our youngest is just entering the 4th grade. Our house is loud, busy, chaotic, with lots of broken stuff and nothing glittery or pink anywhere. As someone who was homeschooled myself from grades 4 through 8, who works in the homeschooling community, and who homeschools my own children, I feel like I have a pretty good look into the facets of this paradigm with the challenges and the incredible blessings that it offers. So let's talk a little bit about what you as a parent can expect from English 2. So we have a number of goals that we'll work toward in our 32 weeks of class this year. The slide lists those out. I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights here. The overarching premise of each is critical thinking and intentionality. In literature, for instance, students will be exposed to a variety of genres, everything from nonfiction essays to fiction, short stories, lots of poetry, especially in our last quarter. We're going to examine these pieces for plot line, but also rhetorical structure. So this is how the author is trying to communicate his message to us through a story, and then drawing conclusions on those messages in light of a biblical worldview. So students are not required to be Christians or to believe the things that I do. I welcome discussion of other points of view, but in the interest of full disclosure, you should know I am a Jesus girl. Before I'm anything else, I'm a follower of Christ. And whatever we read or talk about, for me, comes through that filter. In composition, we're going to be continuing the move that we started in English 1 away from accidental writing to more intentional writing. I say just what I intend to say in the way I intend to say it. We follow the overarching principle of that great sage Yogi Berra, who said, if you don't know where you're going, you'll wind up someplace else. So the goal is to be even more intentional and even more aware of where we're going. So students will solidify the academic essay style while also learning a new style we're going to call the CEA. This is the claim example analysis. This is how we're going to develop and argue literary analysis. This is how we look at those rhetorical appeals and what the author is doing. We also bring in at this stage peer review. In English 1, peer review would have been the blind leading the blind. But now, at this point, students are beginning to recognize what works and what doesn't in someone else's work, and ideally, they're starting to see it in their own. When a writer is able to articulate what works and why that works, or what doesn't work and why it doesn't, like it doesn't connect the dots or the phrasing is repetitive, this is when you'll start to see the real growth as a writer in your student. It's that recognition. And so hopefully bringing in the peer review, this ability to apply critique as to someone and then also to your own writing, this is where we're headed, and hopefully you'll see some big growth in your student as a writer. So going forward, students will have the option for the second draft of parent feedback or a peer feedback or both. Ideally, it's both if they're willing to do that many drafts. But certainly they have they will have an assigned partner in class to work on those compositions at the second draft stage. For grammar, we're continuing our journey of learning how language works. Our text is called application. So instead of just identifying nouns and verbs and sentence patterns, we're now looking specifically at how this knowledge impacts the flow of language when we write with that understanding. Again, increasing the fluency of written expression. The lines of grammar, I just wanted to show you this table of contents. You'll see that here on page 129 is the answer key to the practice exercises. So the way that grammar will work this year in English 2 is that I will present the grammar lesson in class as hitting kind of the highlights, the mini lesson of the lesson in the book. After class, students are expected to read that lesson in its entirety and to do the applies or the practice exercises that follow. I ask that students would check those applies, go to the answer key, check your answers, and to be sure that they're getting the right answers, that they do in fact understand. If they don't understand the material, reread the lesson, practice again, text me, call me, send me an email, ask me what's going on, how do I figure it out, so that they are confident in that material, that they know what they're doing, because the accountability factor will be that the following week there will be a 5-question quiz at the beginning of class, closed book, closed notes, whatever. It's a quiz over every lesson, but 5 questions, just basically holding them accountable for the reading and the practice for the week, with questions coming directly from the textbook. So sometimes it's even copied and pasted from the text and pasted into the quiz, or one of the homework exercises. If they did the homework, they should be able to answer the question on the quiz correctly. So the homework in itself is not graded or held to any accountability with me. It's the quiz that's going to ensure that students are keeping up with the assignments and understanding what we're doing. Continuing the conversation about writing, as I've already alluded to, we're bringing in this idea of the peer conference. So in English 1, the first draft was always from me, teacher directed. The second draft went to the parent to give feedback. In English 2, we're shifting that just a little. The first draft will still always come to me up until the last 2 pieces of the year. The last 2 pieces of the year, I will ask students to do their own first conference, and then I will look over what they are pointing out in their first drafts, because in English 3, there is no more first draft stage where it comes to the teacher. So that's just a little bit of a look ahead, but that's not until the end. But for most of the pieces that we do, the draft will come to me, the first draft. I'll give extensive feedback. Students can make corrections. And then for the second draft, they will have the option of working with either a assigned partner from the class or to ask a parent for that feedback. And so this is up to the student between you and your child. If you want to do that feedback or if you want them to work with their peer, you don't care either way. They could do both. The more feedback, the better. But the idea is to become less dependent on the teacher and more able to recognize what's happening in their own writing, which then brings us to the way that the self-assessment and final copy are put together. So this is going to be one document that I'll provide for them the week that the final copies are due. And the first part of the self-assessment is a fairly long series of questions. In fact, it's worth 10 points of the total final copy score because it's a little more in depth. It will probably take them 30 minutes to 45 minutes to complete the self-assessment, but it's really asking students to dive into their process for developing their writing. The big goal is not writing by accident. I'm doing this on purpose. And so there's questions like, how could you have improved word choice in this? How did you improve word choice? What do you want to remember for the future? How did you organize? Why did you choose this organizational system? How did that work? What would you do differently in the future? What did you learn through this process academically, spiritually, or personally? So the questions are a little bit more in depth. And that's the first part of that final copy document that they will submit. The self-assessment, like I said, is worth 10 points. So please remind your student to make sure that those questions are answered, because having blanks it just takes a hit off of the grade. So if you are the parent doing that second conference, I just want to encourage you to look more for the mode of communication than the little details of punctuation. So as important as those little details are, the ability to communicate content well is the primary focus. So for students, when they struggle with this, they go from point A to point C and forget point B. It's in their head, it just hasn't made it to the paper. And so that's where I encourage writers, I do it myself, to go to somebody else who's not in my head and say, hey, can you follow my line of thinking here? And so that's really what's happening with that second draft is, can someone who's not in my head follow my line of thinking? And then if you happen to notice that they've used the word zestful 15 times in 5 paragraphs, you can point out, hey, maybe you want to change up your word choices here, or 3 out of 5 sentences start with the, maybe change that up a little bit, or you're missing commas completely, let's add a couple, things along those lines. That's fine. But the overarching picture of those second draft conferences is the idea for how things are being communicated. Materials for our class include some way of organizing class documents. So either the paper hard copy version with a binder and dividers, and your filing papers, and well, your student is filing papers in grammar, composition, and literature, or you can use a digital version if your student is more comfortable typing than handwriting. He or she is welcome to bring a laptop or a tablet to class and have Dropbox downloaded offline so that he can access those documents as we go, marking things up on that particular document rather than having it printed out in a binder. But either way, there just needs to be some method of organizing the class materials. If you are going to be printing things, you're going to need some printer ink. Just go ahead and buy an extra cartridge now, and then a working printer, of course, because these documents will come every week and students will need to have them available for use in class. The texts that you need were the ones that I sent out in the letter with the syllabus: The Hound of the Baskervilles, Animal Farm, The Mousetrap, which is much easier to find in a collection of Agatha Christie's plays rather than as an individual standalone play. That's actually really hard to find, or it's very expensive. And then the Grammar the Right Way application ebook for download. So that's our grammar text. You'll purchase it, the link will be emailed to you, and you can immediately download it to your computer. There is no expectation that you would print that book, although you are welcome to. I have sent my copy to Staples and printed it in black and white on the least expensive paper option, and it costs somewhere around $20 to just print the entire book. If you don't do that, which is completely fine, I recommend that students print the applies, those practice exercises. They are intentionally put together without color or graphics so that students can print them and work on them and not have to go up and down from the computer screen to their own paper, or try to type on a PDF, which can get very clunky. So it's easier just to print out those application pages. But none of that is required. It's completely as whatever will work best for your family. I'm going to provide the nonfiction essays, any short stories, and then later in the year, our last quarter, we'll do a very intensive poetry study. It's wonderful. My good friend from the Potter School, mentor, teacher, and colleague, Diana Thomas, wrote a poetry handbook that I think is the best that I've ever seen, so I continue to use it. So she is making some changes for me that I asked her to work on with some editing, that just to make it a little bit of a better product with an answer key and some other things. So that's not available just yet, but it will come available, and I'll let you know when that happens somewhere after Christmas. But just know that that will cost $15. All of that money goes to Diana, and then we will do that poetry study. It's also an ebook that will be downloaded to your computer. Again, there's no expectation of printing that, although you're welcome to, but I would certainly save it for future English classes going forward. It's rich in content for sure. Students will also need Microsoft Word access. So Google Docs and Dropbox are not particularly compatible these days. They used to be completely compatible up until about 3 or 4 years ago when they started to separate out. And now with Dropbox, in order for Google Docs to work seamlessly, you have to buy a subscription for that. I don't want you to have to do that. And the easiest workaround is to not use Google Docs for things that you're going to submit to Dropbox. If it originates as a Word document, it seems to work a whole lot better. So if you have any device available where you can start the composition document, so the things that students are working on starting fresh, right? They're not working off of one of my documents, but working with a new document. If that can be Microsoft Word, I think that you will find that to be a much easier process. With that being said, no, I'm going to hold that thought. So, and again, the idea of the notebook versus the laptop is whatever's going to work best for your student and your family. And either of those are fine as long as you settle on one and then work with that. Parent fit in. Well, we've already talked about the potential for that second draft feedback, should you and your child agree that you are the person to do that. Also, having some technical knowledge potentially help your student if they need it with how to double space a document, to change fonts if they want to, add colors or throw in a comment, those things, and just working with Microsoft Word. And then this Dropbox, ensuring that they're using Dropbox correctly. And let me just stress that the easiest way to do this is to have Dropbox as a downloaded app to your computer. So if you go to Dropbox and you have to go to Dropbox.com, it's not a downloaded app. You're just using the light version. And so you can use Dropbox by having to go online, but if you completely download the app to your computer, then it allows you to access those files when you're offline, like when you come to class, for instance. Also, you don't have to deal with the whole uploading and downloading. You can just drag and drop in and out of your Dropbox folders. It's super user-friendly if that is completely downloaded. And you can know that you have Dropbox completely downloaded if you look at the taskbar at the bottom of your screen and you see a small white Dropbox box, not the blue icon, but just a little white box. And you click on it, and all it does is open your Dropbox folders. It does not take you to the internet. When that happens, you know you've got it all the way downloaded. With that being said, I purchased a new laptop just recently for my sons, and in attempting to download Dropbox, I was having a really hard time, and I didn't know why that was. And after doing a little bit of digging, I realized it was because, of course, I didn't buy a Chromebook and Google Docs because for all the reasons I just said. Instead, I bought an HP, which was preloaded with Microsoft. Well, Microsoft has a functionality called Microsoft S Mode, and the S stands for something, but whatever it is, it will not allow a full download of Dropbox. It's only the light version of Dropbox, which makes you go to the internet. So I had to disable the S mode in order to fully download Dropbox, which does nothing. Like, it's totally fine to not have S mode. I don't even know why they do that, why these companies feel like they need to control everything we do, for the love. That's a side tirade. But if you are finding that you cannot, if you get a little pop-up that says that this is not in the Microsoft store, Dropbox isn't in the Microsoft store, and you should download Dropbox Lite, then your computer is in S mode, and that's where that problem is coming in. And I learned that after some frustrating minutes of trying to download an app that I have downloaded on every computer I've had for the last 17 years. And then all of a sudden it became hard. Also with grading, there will be just a couple of grammar exams that I will ask parents to grade and send me the score. I'll always provide you with an answer key. All of the exams are multiple choice, and so you'll just send me the score when that is completed. Grades, those will be kept on GradeKeeper, which is a program on my computer that I have no way of making available to families online, like a Canvas or a Schoology scenario. It's just on my computer. However, I will send out weekly grades, and at any time you can request a grade report. It's very easy for me to, a couple clicks, and I can send you the report for your student. Also, after any major assignment that I finished grading, I'll send those grade reports out too. You can see here the weights for the different categories and how that English 2 grade will come together. I think we've covered everything here in my other notes and everything that I've previously said, except that there are class documents to be found already for week 1. They are already posted in Dropbox. You should be able to see them. If you cannot, let me know. Here is my phone number and email. I encourage students all year, if you're having a problem, contact me sooner rather than later. Feel free to text me, call me, email me anytime. I'm happy to help. So few students take me up on it, but when they do, we really have some breakthroughs. So encourage your student, if they're feeling frustrated, just to shoot me a text or give me a call, and I'm happy to help in any way so that we can all be successful and not get lost in the process. So here we are. Class starts next Thursday. It is coming quickly. The summer has flown by. I don't know about you, but it sure has for me. So for class next week, you will need the week 1 documents printed out of Dropbox and filed in an English 2 notebook or on the device that you'll be bringing to class. Some paper or device for taking notes. Also just some paper to jot answers down on, especially for those grammar quizzes. Those will just be 5 quick notes on a piece of scrap paper, so just make sure they have some paper in there, and then a writing instrument of choice so that we can go forward with all that we have to do. And so with that, I think you're ready to start. If you have questions, if there's concerns about any of this, let me know. I'll send out some reminder emails right before class starts as well. But any questions about policies, procedures, content, any of that, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I look forward to re-engaging with you and your student or meeting you for the first time in just about a week. Thanks for listening.